All right, I'm leaving.
How's my hair?
I think it looks great. Well, thanks everyone for joining. Today's February 2nd, 2021, and the world is not burning this week, so that's good. But I want to welcome some new folks. Janita's joining us for the first time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And thank you for joining. And you've probably seen Ben Patton, and I think Joe Dukes will also join as well. But both of them have been kind of contributing. And I think at some point Carrie Lord will join. So that'll be cool. But we're getting ready to ramp up and hopefully start to become more kind of outward facing. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. But before we do that, I wanted to jump in and thank everyone for your contributions. Brian Chappell and Robert for really being solid advisors and helping with reviewing content, and especially for the blog and all other documents and documentation stuff. And then a big shout out to Ben Patton for the documentation updates and just asking a lot of great questions. And Joe Dukes for editing my media post, which has been awesome because I struggle with cohesive sentences sometimes. But I think Joe is really excited. And then always Tyler for the great code contributions, especially the last 2 weeks on the website. He did a lot of refinement and a lot of wordsmithing on there, and I think it looks really great. So thank you all, and thank everyone else. If I forgot you, I'll remember next time. So that's kind of welcome and kind of the shout outs, and then the next section I got is updates. So on the documentation site, I've been tracking a change log. If you want to put your contributions in the change log, that'll be great. It is manual right now, but it's easy for me to invite you as an author of the documentation, and you can go in to the change log and add your work. And again, it's not the main reason for the change log is just to give everyone kind of a quick communication of what's happening, so you can feel up to date and feel like you're informed with where the project's going and kind of what the status of it is. So check it out. I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm just going to go through a couple of highlights. The last 2 weeks, I think it was the last 2 weeks, we launched documentation site. So last meeting we were talking about, kind of debating where to put the documentation, what tool to use, all of that. And after that, overnight, I just realized that I was kind of bike shedding and just not getting things out the door. So I was like, let me try this ArchB thing. It looks nice, and pulled it up, and I was able to start getting stuff done. So I don't know if this is the end all be all of our documentation site, but I was able to put together a lot in a very short amount of time. and get a lot of eyeballs on it. And plus it all kind of exports down to Markdown, which is nice. So if we do, I would prefer it to be close to the code. I would prefer it to be auto-generated. But also I know when people are starting to look from the outside of the project, being able to see some documentation is good. And so anyway, anyone have any thoughts about the documentation? Is it a good start? Is it a bad start? What are your thoughts? I'll start with Tyler.
I mean, I think it looks good. I haven't used Archview before, but if Brian's backing it, I tend to trust Brian on sort of product recommendations. He has a pretty good eye for this sort of stuff. So I think it looks good. And like you said, at the end of the day, if it makes you more productive than and getting something out the door, then great.
Cool. Robert?
Yeah, a lot of the stuff we talked about like 2 weeks ago was like ideal world, big, hand wavy stuff. But I mean, in 2 weeks, look where we are now. Look where you are now. Yeah. And what's great is that, like, if you can export all of this, like you said, to Markdown, I think you said that. Yeah. If you can get all your stuff and put it somewhere else, I mean, that's fine. That's great. Yes. And it's better to, like you said, it's better to have something than, nothing but 100 great ideas. So yeah, no, I like it. And if it feels good to work with, then fine.
Yeah. Cool. Casey, any thoughts?
No thoughts. Looks good to me. I think Robert's comment about 100 great ideas pretty much sums up my thought here.
Gotcha. And then a couple other things is we launched a blog, used Ghost. So it seems to be working well, seems to be getting a lot of traction and no one's complaining. So that's good. But one of the things that I thought about going back and forth with, using like a Medium or a Dev2 or something else, was that I just keep going about owning your own content and the need to own your own content. And those walled gardens are great for reach, but then they're not so great either because they become that content. So I took the Ghost route, set it up, literally took like less than an hour, and been really pleased so far with it. And again, it handles all the kind of the media bookmarks as long as you fill it in right, and creating the Twitter cards and all of that stuff pretty well. And I think, again, just seems like it's getting a pretty good traction. And kind of interesting, Hacker News is really good. Even if no one clicks on your link or upvotes you, literally, if you post a link there, you're going to get like 15 hits, just FYI, which is kind of interesting. But got that up, and also been posting a lot of social media, and thank you everyone for liking and retweeting and all of that. Super helpful. Basically just trying to slowly get the word out and kind of focus on, as you may have noticed, preaching about APIs and how important APIs are and how important it is to do APIs correctly, because I think that kind of ties into Hyper's mission. Is Hyper is there to make it easier for you to build apps, but at the end of the day, you still got to know how to build an API. Otherwise, you're going to end up with a lot of business logic in your front end, like you know, a lot of over engineering on the front end, possibly. So that's kind of been my strategy, is to really try to educate and communicate about building APIs and how important an API is. And then on the back end, you want something like Hyper to create a boundary between your, you know, kind of secret sauce, what makes your app special, and the cloud stuff. How does that sound? Is that coming across okay? Is there any comments or critiques on that message or the content of that message? Yep, Robert.
Yeah. You know, businessy marketing, whatever people who are in acquisitions or whatever at a company, they're gonna. The last thing you said is the thing to me that like makes their ears perk up whenever I've ever had to go down this route as well. Whether that's selling a feature to my own company or getting other people interested. And that's the, you know, I'm going to put on my shoulders, like, you know, your Atlas thing, but I'm going to put on my shoulders the stuff that you don't want to deal with that are not core to your business, so that you can focus on your secret sauce. Like what driving whatever that point is. I butchered it, but you said it real nice. But driving that home early is always, I think that's going to be really good for you.
Cool. Tyler, any thoughts?
I mean, nothing besides what Robert was just saying. And like all the blog posts that you posted, they sound really nice. I know you had concerns about it sounding too like salesy, but it just sounds like the content just seems more just informative and educational, and kind of just preaching kind of what you're saying, just keeping your business logic all in one place and not spreading it out throughout your app, and how certain frameworks or tools sort of advocate you doing that, and you should sort of resist the urge to hop on board with those things without first understanding the costs. So yeah, I think the content's been good so far.
Cool.
I don't want to steal, I want to keep talking. I'm sure like other people have things to say, but Tyler just made me remember something else I wanted to add, which is I think you're doing right with the blog posts because they're not necessarily super salesy. Like I think that the blog post, like the blog post approach of where you provide value, even if people don't use your service, is a good way to go. You know, because like I feel like developers see so much like salesy stuff that like we have such a good nose for it, and we just kind of glaze over and forget it. But if we can get value out of, you know, what you're teaching or preaching, then later, you know, if not now, then later, you know, we'll come back.
Yep, that's a great point. And that's really kind of the focus, right? Is, you know, the whole reason for doing this is to provide value, and you know, Hyper may be a great fit for some teams, but really, if I feel if teams will just pay attention to where they're putting their, you know, their stuff, then the outcome is going to be a better quality overall, whether you use Hyper or anything else on the back end. And I want to keep that message true, right? When people think of Hyper, they should be thinking, well, you know, they're focusing on trying to improve the developer experience, and there's a product that helps, but at the end of the day, it's about, you know, and I don't think the 41% tech debt got a lot of hits, but at the same time, to me, I don't think a lot of people realize how much it costs just to do, kind of keeping the lights on, especially once a project gets about 3 years, 4 years on. The amount of money that's spent is tremendous. And one person on a thread on Hacker News says, "No, we just do features all day." And I said, well, what do you do with your tech debt? And they're like, "Oh, that's for someone else to deal with." And but he's like, I don't think I'm going to be working here long because no one deals with the tech debt. So I think that's a lot of the mindset. It's like everyone's pushed to do features, so you either put aside all that debt and it builds up, and it's sort of one of those things that after a year or two of it building up, you start to have like nightmares about it, right? And then the begging for the rewrite comes in, type of thing. So anyway,
and then repeat.
Yes. Cool. On the other side of the content stuff, Brian Chappell is working through kind of the README, and we're going to be updating that a little bit more to really focus on kind of contributors and focusing on a contributor's guide and trying to get a better idea of where, when you look at the README, where to go to get involved with Hyper. So that's coming. It's still a work in progress, but we're getting there. And then the other thing that we're trying is a roadmap and sort of set up this projects in GitHub, just because it's simple and easy to do, but it's effectively like a Trello board. But basically the roadmap will have anybody that wants to ask for a feature can post it in this under review column. And then, we'll use this time in the future to talk through these features as a technical steering committee, right? So the technical steering committee will really focus on trying to determine what should go from under review to planned. And then from plan would be, it's kind of approved, and then someone just needs to own it, and that would shift it to in progress. And then we'd have a column for a particular version for shipping. Does that sound good to you guys? Is that something that everyone can get on board with, or is there any other suggestions or recommendations?
I definitely think something is needed. So after the last meeting, I tried to look somewhere to sort of get a foothold in, but I wasn't really sure where to go. Because I know there's some like descriptions, and I looked at some code and all that's great, but I just, I didn't really know what I could do as far as like where to go, where to start. So I think that will be very helpful for that.
Cool.
It's
awesome.
Good. I like it.
Yeah, and I want to put a quote contributors guide together, and really sort of explain kind of the areas of contribution, and I think that'll help now that we've got kind of a good skeleton of kind of the basics of the documentation site, and really the core is kind of moving into a stable state. Like I'm using it for 2 projects, and and things are working great. And then basically the way that I'm managing features is as I find something I need in a project, then I'll add that feature here. And of course, everyone else is happy to contribute to a feature. But one feature that I know I need to add in the next week or so is a bulk endpoint for data, so that I could send an array of documents into a data store. I added a bulk for search last week, which has been pretty awesome. And it's simple to do. It just takes time. But that's kind of all the updates. Did I miss any? Did anyone have any updates that I might have missed?
What you decide? Last time we talked a lot about like Node and NPM versus like the Dino world, and I've kind of been busy. So
Yeah.
I didn't see any
Thanks
updates
for
about like the official. This is what we're doing.
Yeah. So right now it's in Node CJS, or common JavaScript, and still struggling with that because I really want to go ESM really bad, but I don't want to create a lot of overhead. So I'm hopeful. I guess what I'm currently doing is kind of, I think the Dino kind of proof of concept I can convert over to Node, and I think I might be able to make it dual Node and Dino capable. But I think that's kind of the way to go, is to see if I can't, and it may take time. It may be just like waiting to some good practices come together, and stick with common JS until it makes sense. But I think if what I would like to see is somewhere around July have like a Node ESM and Dino solution. But the other thought that I had was, definitely building a Dino client. So I have a Node.js client and a Dino client, and leave the back end kind of Node for a while. So that's where I'm at. Is anyone else giving any thought to that?
Not much thought to that, but just a question on something you said just now with the dual Node and Dino capable. Is the idea there to have like the files that are ESM and then use something, I don't know, like Rollup or Babel, whatever, to produce the C, like the common JS, and like transpile it, and then that way you use the source with Dino? Or are you talking about like another strategy to support both?
Yeah, a couple of things. One is kind of the native ESM in Node, and then having that depths file, the depths file kind of switch based on what you're building, right? So everything would import like in Dino through depths.js, and you just use a Node depths or a Dino depths is one way. But I'm kind of waiting a little bit because I have a feeling, and I haven't read a lot more about it, but I have a feeling that Snowpack is kind of moving to this streamable package management system. And if it works the way that I understand it, then basically Snowpack will become kind of this streaming npm install, right? You just do import whatever from JSPM or import from Skypack, and boom, it'll pull it down, and it'll manage the cache for you. So I think in another 6 to 8 weeks that that might be a potential alternative. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
So basically, you know, what Dino does is when you run it, it just does a Dino install and pulls all your files down and puts it in a Dino modules folder, right? So what Snowpack with their streaming updates would do the same thing, so that you would never have to use npm install or yarn install again. It would just take your, you know, imports and exports and build the manifest dynamically and build the log files and pull those down from a registry. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And if that's the case, then, you know, you could literally have, you know, just a compile time flag, old school compile time flag, saying, am I building for this platform or I'm building for this platform? And include what you're doing based on that.
Dig it. I wore this today for you.
All right.
I saw that.
Yeah. Jurassic World. Anyway, I haven't been. I hear it's.
I've got the
fun.
Dino. Hubby, can you see?
Yeah. There you go. Yeah.
But yeah, I know it's still up in the air. There's more important stuff to do right now.
Yeah.
So with that though, I figured that we could spend the last remaining things talking about planning and have like a little micro road mapping session of anything that anyone has like hot on their list of things that they would like to see added to Hyper. And I know some of you guys are not super familiar with Hyper yet, so that's okay. But you know, basically a couple of things that are on my list is to add the let's see, card. Let's add the bulk endpoint. And then the other things on my list is to ship the Elastic search adapter and Redis adapter. I think I actually shipped that one. And the MinIO adapter. I know we talked about a MongoDB adapter and Postgres adapter. We have a Node.js client, but this client is very opinionated. Basically, and I need to do some documentation on that, but basically it sets up, you give it a a name, an app name, like foo, and then it just gives you all the commands as if that's one kind of entity. So you don't have to specify the data store name or the cache name or the search name or the storage bucket name. It just takes your app and names it that. So then you can just start writing docs or search indexes or whatever right into the API. So we may need another kind of general Node.js client. One of the things that I was planning on adding to this one was some flags like auto caching, where you could give it a document type and just say cache true or something like that. And then what the client would do is every time you added a doc, it would add the doc to the data store, and that's successful, add it to the cache. And then every time you updated the doc, it would invalidate the cache and update with the new one. And then lastly, if you did a query, it would query the cache first for all the documents and then query the database. So it would just basically add this pattern of putting caching and cache invalidation around these types of documents like widgets or movies or something. And then another flag is like searchable, right? Which would do the same thing. So you could get, let's say you had a type of document like a movie. With the client, you could flag that document type as searchable. And then basically every time you add a document, it would automatically index that document into the search. So then you would get, full text search or whatever set up so that you're not, using like or anything like that. You just get those particular documents automatically pushed into your search index. Any thoughts?
That all definitely sounds really awesome. Because that's definitely going to be like a use case that pops up for like, hey, I've created a piece of data and now I want to be able to search for it. Now I want it cached as well. The Elasticsearch adapter, I really wanted to work on this back over the holidays, but then life sort of happened and did not get the time that I was expecting. So I'd still like to be able to create that if I unless it just becomes a blocker. But I might need to just hit you up on the Elasticsearch adapter and just make sure I have the correct understanding of what we want from there. I think you've done some really great work in sort of making it really easy to build an adapter with like the ports and using Zod for the validation that just sort of wraps the whole thing. And that serves as your test as well. It's really cool. So I might just reach out to you just to make sure I'm on the same page, and hopefully life permitting, it doesn't like jump out at me and I can actually work on this.
Yeah, no, that would be great. Yeah, I think I've got the documents to where basically I've got this mini search adapter, which is like a little node module, but when setting up a search, you have to pass it a mapping object, and that mapping object basically has a fields object, which takes an array of all the fields that you want to search for, and then a store fields object, which takes an array of all the fields that you want to store in the document. And that maps over nicely. There's a little work with Elasticsearch, but all the pieces are there to map that same interface over. And then I finally got a good search request document spec'd out where you pass the query and then you can pass a filter. So you can say, here's my query string, like, what was the best movie of 1984, right? And then you could also include a filter, and that filter is an object that has a key and a value. So in this case, your filter would be the key year with the value 1984, because you don't want to search for a movie that wasn't published in 1984, right? And then there's I can't remember the name of the property, but it's like terms. So basically, if you give the search index fields that you want to search on are like title and content and year, then you can, in your query, specify that, for this query, I only want to look at the title field for the search index, or I want to look at the title and the year for my search index, but not the content. So you can kind of specify what index you want, but by default, it would use all. So I think I've got that pretty well defined and flexible enough, but not overly complicated. That'll work well. So whenever you get ready to work on that, hit me up and I'll be glad to go over that with you.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Cool. Did anyone else have any suggestions for things they would like to see in the next month or so, or anyone want to take a stab at contributions? Go ahead.
I've got some questions about security stuff. So what are you using? Like, do you have any services right now or adapters for any like authentication services? Like,
yeah, that's a great question. So right now we've got, let's see, we can go to the docs. We got a killer new website. Right now we've got a function that we're kind of calling middleware, and basically how that works is there's a app interface, and then there's these adapters, and then there's a core module. The app interface now is kind of specified, and it could be anything, but it's specified off of Express. And we've got two kind of app implementations. We have a REST one and a GraphQL one, but they both kind of run off of Express. So this middleware allows you in your config, if you put, like a security module or whatever, and you basically can just create a script, and it's a function that gets past the app, and then you can do whatever you would do in Express with the app, and then you return it so that it can chain through an array of middleware. So you can handle security, you can handle encryption, you can handle throttling, or other kinds of things, all through middleware before each endpoint. And I actually, to give you an example, go to, oh no, did I just lose that? Oh well, I'll remember it. Some video. So here I created this play site, and it's using JWT for security, but also in order to save time, I actually created the static kind of web page for it. So it actually uses Express static and runs public there. And then I also created the ability to send a token to whoever enters the token as middleware. And then I just kind of configured all of that up in a hyperconfig file where I just added this middleware. So the result is you get this hyper63 running that has JWT as security, is throwing up a static website, and it's also sending tokens behind the scenes. And this is the sandbox that I've been working on, where people can use the hyper63 service, and they can come in and enter in their email address and hit get token, and not a super great UI, but it works. And then they should get their token emailed to them. I don't know where I sent it, but that's sort of how we're handling security. Is we're just basically saying there's so many opinions about security, so we're just going to give you a hook to add it in via middleware, and then you can add your own security based off of that middleware. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Would you ever have any interest in basically integrating other security services? Like, I don't want to keep track of users. I want to use Google to do that.
Right.
Would that ever be, and then with that, you could create like OpenID scopes for it. Would that ever be something that you would want implemented as part of hyper63, or do you want that to just remain sort of custom logic?
Yeah. So I kind of just like the approach of modularity, and then that way, because like security for a multi-tenant kind of SaaS portal will be different than security for, you know, a hobby project, right? I think you kind of, you know, you kind of have to get opinionated about it. But if you can think of a way to not be opinionated, and that's better than this approach, I'm all ears.
You got a question?
Yep.
So I'm trying to think of like the user flow for, you know, they're like, okay, we want to have our custom auth or their own auth stuff and using hyper63. So I'm thinking of like, all right, we've got this agency that makes apps for whatever, for car companies or startups or whatever. And so they've got like, say they've got like 10 different clients, but they want to use hyper63 for each one of the clients. They're still going to have like their core app, right? Where they are like, they've got their core app with their business logic, but then they use that server side app to call out to hyper63. So I'm assuming if they're on the web, they're going to be using their own, like they're already going to have their own kind of auth set up. And then they're just like, hey, hyper63, I'm this company calling in for this client, you know, like here's my auth stuff to access my shared space over there. I mean, and so I'm trying to like kind of figure out where the JWT stuff comes in.
Yeah. So again, if you're building your API, you're going to manage your user base authorization through that API, and that's super important. If you're building a server-side app, and let's say you're connecting to something like MySQL or Postgres, normally the server-side app kind of manages a couple of roles to that database, like report user or read-only user, right? Or admin, I can do everything user. So I kind of envision hyper63 kind of, you know, that's what you would be setting up, is kind of these kind of more roles and responsibility users. And then in this middleware, you can, and I think scopes is a great way to do that, right? You can do scopes and then use the JWT audience attribute to represent a tenant. And I'm actually working on a blog post to talk about this stuff. But basically, ideally, if you are, running Hyper inside your cloud, you have certain security requirements there. If you're running it over the wire, using public and private keys, elliptical curve encryption, and just having your server application either call a service that generates those tokens or generate the tokens and send them to hyper63 is the best that I've come up with. And again, open to that, but you can, with this middleware, you can go, and I think it's pretty cool. Maybe this JWT can give you an example, but you can go over each endpoint and basically map scopes and create rejections based on those scopes before it even gets to hyper63. So you could say, app use, and my scope is /data, or my endpoint is /data. So all /data endpoints, if this user is a read-only user, then they can't call post, they can't call put, they can't call delete, right? So with the middleware, you can basically layer that. And my thought is to maybe have some example implementations of that for people that they can kind of fork and make it their own. So here's an example of something heavily scoped based on some common, admin, read-only user attributes, and then they could fork that and say, well, I really have a pharmacist or a doctor user, and I want to change it this way or that way. Does that make sense? Did that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? So that's one is the playground we talked about last 2 weeks. I've got that set up. I'm just working out the documentation, but it's out there, and you can go to the site, put your email address, and get yourself a JWT token. So maybe, yeah. So you'll get yourself a JWT token emailed to you, and you'll have access to play.hyper63. So going to use that in the upcoming workshop this Thursday. Hint, hint. Cool. Ben, thanks for joining. We did give you a shout out for all the great documentation support and questions, but do you have any questions since you're kind of new to the project? Any thoughts or questions at this point?
No, not really. I'm just from what we've talked about, I'm eager to see a live example of like a client connecting to a database, calling out the Hyper, like seeing it all come together.
Yeah. So
just wrap my mind around it a little bit more, but no, I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, and that's brings up another good point that we talked about on the Slack was since I don't have like a really good contribution guide and really really clear way on how folks can contribute. One of the things I suggested was to do, 3 times a week, 1 hour live streams where I'm like actually working on Hyper for an hour and let people join, and record that, push that up on YouTube, and then hopefully that can serve as a interim, and I'm able to get some stuff off the list, so it makes me accountable, but you guys can kind of tune in and get familiar. Does that sound like a good plan?
I dig
Sounds good
that.
to me. Sorry, Robert. Go ahead.
No, I'm saying I dig that. That's a really good idea. Twitching or YouTube or whatever is great because you're getting double the value for that time you're spending. Like you're working on it and making output, but you're also, potentially to yourself or to a group of people talking through your ideas and giving people the chance to like dive in without actually having to commit yet.
Ben, you had a comment?
No, I was just saying that sounds good. And
Cool. All right, we've got a couple of minutes left. Any other closing thoughts or comments, things that I missed? I definitely am working on a post about just API security in general and kind of a tutorial on how you might go set up API security that's kind of tool agnostic, right? It's just kind of, and then suggesting like you could use Auth0 or Cognito or Firebase Auth or whatever, or this Go True is another example to implement Auth and see how that goes. But I think that'll hopefully answer more of your questions, Casey, about security.
Cool. Yeah, I'm interested to see the specifics of it for how it's implemented in hyper63.
Yeah.
I think that'll give me a better idea.
Yeah, and that's part of the post. It'll talk about just basic security, API security, and then the tutorial will actually use Hyper as the backend and the play service, so you can kind of code along and implement your own kind of security bit. Cool. Well, thank you all for your time. It's very much appreciated. And if you have any questions, feel free. There's several places now. There's discussions, GitHub discussions. I don't know if you guys have seen these, but I kind of set these up. So if anyone wants to post anything on Hyper63, GitHub discussions is a great place, whether it's an idea or Q&A, show and tell, questions about contributing. That's a great place to do it. Then we have the Discord channel, and don't know what to do about that yet. I try to post things in there every once in a while. And then we have our Slack channel, and I think that'll probably be a topic for the next meeting is I'm so comfortable with Slack. It's super easy, but at the same time, it's kind of a walled garden. So anything you put in there is not super transparent unless we make it open, and maybe that's what we do. We just open it up. Maybe that's the easiest thing to do and not use Discord, but all the cool kids are using Discord. So I don't know. We'll figure that one out. But there's plenty of places to ask questions, and I will get everyone invited to Slack, the Hyper63 Slack, by the end of this week that want to be invited. That's probably the best place for right now. But this discussion board's worth trying out too. All right, closing comments. Anyone have anything else before we call the meeting to order or to adjourn?
I think just hi, Ben, and hi, Janita. I don't think we've met, but hi.
Hey, Robert.
Yeah. Ben, you mind introducing yourself just a minute or so to give the TLDR to the group?
Yeah. I graduated the most recent cohort from JRS, and I got a full-time job 2 weeks ago today at Primal in Mount Pleasant. And so since working there, we use, Tom's been helping out with some of what we're working on, and so then I just started messaging back and forth with Tom about all the hyper stuff and getting super interested in it because I can see the immense value it'll have for us as we take on clients and manage projects, and the technical debt that I came in on as y'all were talking about that. So yeah, I'm just happy to be doing this as a job. I enjoy it.
Did I talk to your class?
You did. Yep.
Okay, I thought you looked familiar. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
Nito, you want to do an intro?
Sure. I did the JRS night program, and I'm working with Casey at Call Experts.
Cool. Welcome.
Awesome. Nice to meet you.
Welcome.
Yeah, and that's another thing I'm going to work on the next 2 weeks without README is get all the contributors on the README and let you guys put your bios there and try to make that a little bit more formal, because I definitely appreciate, and get everybody a hat. So I got to get Ben and everybody else that contributes a hyper63 hat. Casey, I need to get you a hat. Cool. All right, guys. Thanks. Have a great day.
Yeah, you
Thanks.
too.
Y'all have a
Yeah.
good one.
Bye. Thank you.
Had to put on my hyper hat.
Nice. Thanks.
All right. Well,
See you
thanks,
later.
Tom. See ya.
All right.